One of the things that I like to do to pass the time out here, besides reading the Bible and watching YouTube, is to read other books. And this one here is about Admiral Byrd of the United States Navy. He did the Arctic expeditions back in the 1920s and continued the expeditions until he died in his sleep in the 1950s. The book that you can get on here is one by Paul Rink, and it's called Alone in the Antarctic. And in this book here, it's going to talk about the Arctic expeditions from the very start. Admiral Byrd went and raised, Byrd, I don't know. He went and raised the money all on his own to sponsor these early trips. And it's funny, and he used his wording and the way he said things, he persuaded people to fund these expeditions. And the thing was, they didn't really expect to achieve anything big, okay? But he told the companies, wouldn't you like to show that your product has been proven in the Arctic? And a lot of companies were like, yeah, that'd probably help us along. So there's a lot of talk of dog sleds and tracked tractors with tracks on them and airplanes. And eventually the way the book ends is he had a remote base 100 or so miles from the main base, and it was dug into the ground, and he was to monitor weather patterns. And the issue was his stove began to leak, and he was slowly poisoned by carbon monoxide. But due to his own stubbornness, I would say, I wouldn't call it bravery, he had the typical symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning that went on for months because he didn't want to admit that he was in trouble. It talks about him puking on the floor, being so weak he couldn't even hardly operate the key of a Morse code key. And eventually they realized something was wrong with him and go to save him. And this takes several attempts. He was out there for 7 months by himself, and it took probably a month to even get to him. Because they were able to tell that something was wrong because the way he was keying was just so sporadic. And he didn't want to tell them he was sick. But the way that he related in a way to where I think he probably didn't want to embarrass himself, he said, too weak to type back. So they went and they rescued him, and he comes home. And, Arctic Explorer hero, blah, blah, blah. And one of the final trips was sponsored by the United States government. And that's how it ends. Around the 1950s, he dies in his sleep. Accomplished explorer, World War II veteran. It's a good read. It's only got, let me see, 177 pages. Just a couple bucks used. So if you want to read a cool story, get it done today. Alone in the Antarctic.